Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today, I would like to present about this topic, Macroeconomics question 5, which is me, Mohammad bin Hafiz, that I will conduct for the first slide. Then Haziq bin Dahlan, Mohammad Khalid bin Jamil, and the last one is Megat Isyraf bin Megat Affandi. Without wasting any time, here is the graph which is I picked from the internet, and I will present to you about the analyze and comment the trend of inflation in Malaysia in 2015 to 2020. Alright, we get 2015, the first year, which is we get 2.1 percentage of the rate of the inflation, and here is the reason: the implement of the fiscal reforms that have an implication for inflation dynamics is the implementation of the goods and the service tax (GST) in 2015. Potential future changes to the GST rate would have broad-based effects on price. Alright, as we know that Dato Sri Najib explained that fresh good, water supply, electricity supply will be included in GST tax, so that consumer should pay the tax, which is 6% of the each item. Alright, let's move on to the second year, which is 2016, and we get 2.08%. And here is the reason. This is due to higher food price, of which RON 95 was raised by 10.5% in January. The next reason is, in addition, business costs increased as the minimum wage was raised starting July 2016. In addition to labor shortage, while the weakness of the ringgit translate into higher import costs. Alright, let's move on to the third year, 2017, and we get 3.8%. And here is the reason. The reason is the main contributor to the lower inflation rate was due to negative food growth, due to lower prices as well as higher base effects than the previous year. Meanwhile, the growth in the price of food and non-alcoholic beverage components in the core inflation is expected to be in line with the average growth of 3.7%. Alright, in 2017, we see that Malaysia have the inflation rate about the full growth to the lower price. And the second one is Malaysia have the problem with the price of food and non-alcoholic beverage, because that price of food and non-alcoholic beverage, the core inflation increase about 3.7%. Alright, let's move on to the 2018, and we get 0.97%. Alright, here is the reason. Price of goods and service have begun to decline gradually since the beginning of this month, with inflation projected to be below 1% in August and September. It is a result of the implementation of the zero rate for goods and service tax (GST), which started on June 1. Alright, we can see that in 2018 is no more GST in 2018, so that consumer want to pay the tax. Alright, let's move on to the next year in 2019, which is we get 0.66%. And here is the reason. Various downside risks in the global economy could have spillover effects to the Malaysian economy, such as rising trade tension between the United States and China that could contribute to uncertainty and affect investment activity. The World Bank said the risk to grow were largely due to factors related to prolonged uncertainty among investors and a slow recovery in the commodity-related sector. Alright, we can see that United States and China have a conflict, which is give the impact to the economy in Malaysia, such as the investor cannot investing the trade. Alright, the last year is 2020. As we can see that we get negative 1.13%. And here is the result. Here is the reason, which is, as we know that even not in Malaysia, every country have a pandemic COVID-19 special crisis, which is give the impact to the economy, so that Malaysia have the negative 1.13%. Alright, the next reason is floating a price at the pump gradually starting January 2020. The plan of adjustment on water tariff nationwide and the fundamental impact became the main factor of rising inflation in 2020. Alright, I simplification that in 2020 Malaysia have the problem, which is pandemic COVID-19, and the problem or floating oil price. Alright, that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Mohammad Jamil. Okay, today I would like to present about the category of goods that contribute most to inflation in Malaysia. Okay, first, the goods that contributes most to inflation in Malaysia is raw material. Okay, and that is because it refers to an increase in the general price level associated with an increase in the cost of production. For example, steel, oil, corn, grain, gasoline, lumber, forest resources, plastic, and else. That is the thing that human need, the most human need. Okay, number two is the good that inflation in Malaysia is price of good and food ingredient. Okay, this is because in Malaysia, the owner of the shop is never give a promotion, so that will become the increase of the price good in Malaysia when festival season can be called as inflation because it only happen twice a year and not sustained. That is also the in Hari Raya Adil Adha, that is the owner of the criminal and the criminal animal, they will up the price of the animal like cows, goat, which will become expensive the year and the next year. Okay. The third is expenditures and tax. That is when the inflation occurs in Malaysia, government will use surplus budget policies by increase the tax and reduce government spending. That means if inflation occurs in Malaysia, government will up the tax to the consumer while the consumer buy some product in the shop, like the GST, SST, and else. Okay. And last, the asset increase in cost price fully controlled by the developer or owner who influence the cost of house. For example, residential house, shop house, and real estate. That is, the homeowners raise the price of house because the high demand and the high cost. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Danial Dahlan. I'm from DBS 4A. Today I want to talk about what is the meaning of the cost of living. Cost of living is the cost of maintaining a certain standard of living. Change, change, change in the cost of living over time are often operationalized in a cost of living index. Cost of living calculations are also used to compare the cost of maintaining a certain standard of living in the different geographic areas. The cost of living is the amount of money needed to cover basic expenses such as housing, food, taxes, and healthcare in a certain place and time period. The cost of living is often used to compare how expensive it is to live in one city versus another. You live in Kuala Lumpur and Johor Bahru, there is a different of cost of living. And the cost of living is tied to wages. If expenses are higher in a city such as New York, for example, salary levels must be higher so that people can afford to live in that city. Okay, first about cost of living. Individuals need to make early savings money or storage, for example, when in the work environment to cover future costs of living. This statement about especially workers or who in the work, they must have early savings money for their future and for their family too to go up the cost of living in the future in the 10 years and 20 years and after. A study from the Center of Academic Excellence, Putra Business School, University Putra Malaysia UPM, found that middle class workers must have retirement savings of at least 400,000 to 480,000 for 20 years of life for leave after compulsory retirement at age 60. That means all people must have the uh, savings money, and for workers at least 400,000 uh, uh, based on where they live. If the like the example like you live in Kuala Lumpur, there must be a high cost of living, and of course for children, adult or else must have early savings money. For child, parents need to prepare and be parents the important roles to make sure their child have a good life in the future. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Megat Isyraf bin Megat Affandi. I am from DBS 4A. Today I would like to add some another point of cost of living that has been presented by Danial before. So today I will continue with my point. So let's go. The next step of cost of living, it is to manage finance. They need to have good money management skills so as not to occur in living problems nowadays and their future. It will have an adverse impact on oneself as well as to the government. And then problems in measuring the cost of living is the CPI is an accurate measure of the selected goods that make up the typical bundle, but it is not a perfect measure of the cost of living. More about measuring cost of a living, it is the most commonly cited measure of inflation in the United States is the Consumer Price Index or CPI. The CPI is calculated by the government statisticians at the US Bureau of Labor Statistics based on the price in a fixed basket of goods and services that represent the purchase of the average family of four. And then we go to the indicator of cost of living. The indicator of cost of living in economic is indexes include expenses such as food, shelter, transportation, energy, clothes, healthcare, and childcare. A cost of living index is also used to track how much the cost of basic expenses rise over a period. More about indicator of cost of living, it is the Consumer Price Index CPI is a measure of the overall cost of goods and services bought by a typical consumer. The Bureau of Labor Statistics report the CPI each month. When the CPI rises, the typical family has to spend more dollars to maintain the same standard of living, which is same situation in Malaysia. If CPI the Malaysian government rises, the typical family has to spend more ringgit to maintain the same standard of living. So that's all for me. Thank you and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.